Hello everyone, welcome to the next session on ABAP on HANA. In the last class, we have discussed about creating procedures, user-defined functions, and we have also seen how to consume the procedures in another procedures and user-defined functions in SQL queries. In today's class, we will go ahead and implement the open item analysis scenario in our HANA database using SQL programming, using procedures as well as CE functions. Before we proceed, let's quickly look at some important aspects with regard to procedures once more. So there is also an important point that what about the security of the procedure? Security is measured in terms of the person who calls the procedure. So what happens typically in a system that there will be this HANA database and you will be creating procedures in SAP HANA database. For example, you had created a procedure in SAP HANA database as a developer. So you as a developer have lot more authorizations as compared to the real business user in the SAP HANA database, and you had created a procedure into SAP HANA database. So this procedure was created by you. So when you are creating this procedure, you are actually the owner of the procedure in this case. And in such cases, when we create a procedure, this is called the person who created the procedure is also known as definer. Okay, it's known as definer of the procedure. So when you create a procedure, the default security is set as definer, which means even somebody else who call the procedure, let's say a business user who call this procedure now, by default it will use the authorizations which were assigned to you to call the procedure. So when you created the procedure, whatever authorization you had, for example, deleting something from schema, creating a new database table, the the procedure was created with that authorization. Now, whomsoever call this procedure, by default, it will take or it will consider the authorizations of definer, which means if you have written a statement inside this to delete a database table or delete content of the database table, the user who is calling this procedure would not face any difficulties. It will delete the database table entries, even database tables itself from the database. But in typical real-time business scenario, you don't want to do it. You want to do the deletion of data and database tables provided the person who is calling the procedure has the appropriate authorizations to work with the schema, not rather than the definer authorization. So by default, when we create procedure, the procedure gets created with definer authorizations, which means the developer who created that authorization will be used every time you call the procedure. So if the developer had rights to delete data from that schema or a table from the schema, even the caller would not face any challenges to delete that. So anyone who comes and call your procedure would can cause a havoc in the system, even though that person is not authorized to work with the schema and the data. So this is a very critical point when you create database procedures in SAP HANA. Make sure that you do not leave the procedure authorizations, the default SQL security authorization to definer. You should change it to invoker. Invoker means the person who call the procedure. System will check for that person the authorizations during deletion, during creation, during whatsoever. For example, this procedure is trying to call a database table which is salary information. And as a developer for testing, I have been given authorization for creating this, checking the salary table. But what if somebody, a person in the system logs in to HANA and calls this procedure? Since the default authorization for the procedure call is definer, that person will also be able to look at salary data which the procedure is returning. But ideally we should not. We should go ahead and make sure the security level for procedure is set as invoker, not the definer. So at runtime it checks what are all the schema authorizations granted to the person who is calling the procedure, and accordingly the database will process the queries, otherwise it will give an error to the business users. So how do you set this up in the database procedure? So first of all, let me show you the procedure which we created yesterday. For all those procedures, actually the default authorizations are set as invoker. So let me just go to the database table called procedures. So I do select star from procedures database table in SAP HANA. which gives me the list of all the procedures, and maybe I will take one of the procedure which we created, procedure name equals to, let's say, take a procedure which was probably doing um, some logic which was not an imperative logic. So declarative logic was used in one of the procedure, create, insert db, get count, get products. Maybe I'll use get products and execute it to show you what is the security level for this procedure in database. So now if you come down here and scroll till the right, where is the security level for the procedure? Default schema, procedure name, procedure OID, input parameter, output parameter is Unicode definition of the procedure, read only, is valid, is header. It's not displaying here the information, but the default authorization level for the procedure is always definer. So if a developer have created a procedure, whenever whomsoever calls that procedure, system is going to consider the authorization of the definer who defined the procedure, because if you see in the system, it also holds the information about who created this procedure basically. So it makes sure that always users who are calling procedure doesn't face any difficulties. Now this is sometimes also required in case you want to just query or reuse some procedure which are there in the system and which is commonly used across all the people. So that's why this definer authorization is also sometime required, but majorly when you create procedure, make sure that you use security level as invoker. So always try to include this particular syntax in your procedure. So when you're creating a procedure, create procedure name, let's say my proc, with input and output parameters, of course. And then here you have to put a particular syntax called SQL security and use invoker, which means now the person who is calling the procedure, system will check if there's a code like read data or delete a table or delete a data. It checks who is the user who is calling the procedure. Is that user has authorization to delete data from the table or schema, and then only that user will be allowed to call things in the procedure. So make sure the security level is set as invoker. Very important interview question also. Difference between definer privilege and invoker privilege of a procedure. Then you can also put here the default schema, SAP A4H. If I do this, what happens is any table which I'm querying in my procedure, remember, I don't have to put the prefix as SAP A4H. So earlier, whenever we're writing select queries, what we were doing is we were putting the schema name dot table name, right? So that's not required if you put default schema and the schema name. Okay, so if I just say select star from SNWD underscore PD, it will not work. It will ask me the schema name, which I have not given. Okay, so since currently I've logged in with SAP A4H user, the default schema is anyway set, so no problem. But remember, sometimes you're working in multi-tenant environment where you have too many schemas and you connect it to the backend database where there are multiple schemas. So always make sure that you put the schema name, which means all the objects which you are referring inside the procedure belongs to this particular schema. So this is a good practice, these two statements which you should put typically when you're defining your procedures in SAP HANA. Same thing we will also use when we will define an AMDP in our today's class or maybe the next class. So if time permits, I will show you ABAP managed data procedure. It's nothing but a SQL script code written directly in an ABAP class, in an ABAP method. That's called AMDP, ABAP Managed Database Procedures. SQL script is the language for AMDPs. Also, we will see that in today's or tomorrow's class, based on the number of topics which we have to cover. Okay, so that's a brief introduction. Let's look at now how can you debug a procedure. So for example, if I want to open some procedure, maybe go to get products, double click on the procedure to look at its code, and I want to show you how can I debug this procedure. So that's what we did.
Anubhav, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
You said that the user will have certain authorizations to read, write, or delete. Okay, so those authorizations are there in his role, and then you define a procedure and say invoker, and
Mhm.
then the authorization is restricted. Like I didn't,
Absolutely, that's what we
the
wanted. That's
idea
what.
is getting conflicted. I mean, I don't know.
Okay, so let's look at this picture once again. So what is definer? Definer is the person who created the procedure. Okay, so if I am a developer, I have right now authorizations to read a salary table. So if I write a query, select star from salary, in my procedure, I can actually, my procedure can easily go ahead and read the data from this salary table. And this table belongs to, let's say, a schema. Let's say schema A. Okay. Now, right now as a definer, I have been given by database administrator privilege to fire a select query and get the data from salary table. I defined a procedure. The default authorization is set as definer now, which means the person who defined the procedure, whenever somebody call this procedure, system would consider definer's authorizations. So as a definer, I have rights to read the salary data. Why it is done? Because users will not face major league. What happens, these procedures are called behind the scenes, end user will not call them. So we want actually sometimes to create a procedure where we want to read some information, give it to end user, and we don't want a user to worry about authorization. In that case, imagine for every single thing, if we start throwing authorization issues, how many authorizations user or administrators has to manage, correct? So in that case, we use, in some cases where we need typically the authorization, like reading system tables, you need authorization for that. You cannot restrict a user, you need. So in that case, you will define those procedures as a definer privilege. So the person who defined whatever privileges for that at that point of time for that person will be used to call the procedure also all the time, whomsoever is calling. But sometimes when you write true business functionality, you don't want people to read your sensitive data using procedures. So in that case, you should go with invokers authorizations. Means whatever authorization assigned to this guy who is calling the procedure, consider that. So now if this guy has authorization to read data from a schema A, he will be able to he will be able to read the data and get the output from the procedure. If it doesn't have it, it will fail. Okay, and where is the authorization controlled? It's controlled in the security tab in SAP HANA. Here you can see users, and if you go to any user, you would see the list of authorizations available. So here is our SAP A4H user, which is used to connect from our ABAP system to SAP HANA system, and you would see what authorization this guy has. You can actually see that over here by double clicking on the user, which are all the schemas this user has authorizations to basically read something, execute something, call something, all that is defined for this user in the users tab. And that's not as a developer our job, it's a job of HANA administrator. So you see there are different privileges in SAP HANA. So there is, you can see here, these are all the privileges. And similarly, you will have privileges like object privileges, which are at the schema level. So at this schema, this if SAP A4H user can create any object, but this user cannot alter, drop, execute, select anything in this schema. Actually, you see, these authorizations are not selected, you see, but actually create any is given. So he can create anything in the system. So sysbig schema, grantor is system. This user has granted the authorization to the user, SAP A4H. These are all the authorization the user has in this particular schema. Okay. So these are all the different variety of authorizations typically which are managed by administrator, database administrator, pure HANA consultant, not by us. We are just developers. Whatever authorizations we need, we will be given when we start our development. As an ABAPer, you don't need to worry also about these authorizations. Okay. Hope that is clear with the doubt about invoker and definer. Okay. So now I opened a procedure over here and I want to debug this procedure. So you see we have a max quantity input parameter and we have an output over here. So I want to debug and see what is happening in each step. How can I debug a procedure directly from my HANA Studio? So for that you have to prepare one debug configuration. And how do you do that is right click on your procedure, or you have to make sure that you are in SAP HANA development perspective. You can see here on the top right corner, I'm already in SAP HANA development perspective. It has to be on the development perspective. First of all, right click on the procedure. We don't see an option here. So just come to the code, right click in the code, debug as debug configuration. You have to define the debug configuration. Why? The reason is this procedure expect an input, and without passing the input, this procedure cannot start. So to pass an input, we have to define a configuration so that debugging of this procedure can get started. Okay, that's the main reason. So we come here and we select SAP HANA stored procedure. So that's what we want to define a debug configuration for. So I double click on this option, and now you see on the top right corner, input parameters, select it. Okay, it's not showing here. Go to general tab, select local project and select the procedure to debug. So click on browse. It will open up the list of all the procedure for us, and we will select the procedure which we would like to debug. Oops, catalog schemas, you have to choose browse. This is your schema, and now you have to choose your procedure which you would like to debug. So it will load the metadata information of the procedure so that you will be able to define the input parameter values in the debug configuration. That's how you locally debug in SAP HANA Studio. I will also show you in upcoming chapter how to debug from ABAP. When you call a procedure from ABAP side, how can you debug that? So we will see that in later units, but right now we'll see locally how can we debug a procedure, just that particular module if you want to debug. Select your procedure, get products, click on OK, go to input parameters, and you will see the input parameter for this procedure will be now loaded. You can see max quantity is loaded. So let's go ahead and give a value. Let's say 25,000. Sold max sold quantity, yesterday's example. Click on apply, click on debug button. It's just on a safer side saying, would you like to save whatever you've typed it in these HANA consoles? I say no, deselect all and say OK. And now you can see here this procedure is still available, but to start the debugging you need to click on this debug icon. You can see it's already running. Click on this debug icon. Okay, and it's saying this to save this. Okay, let me close these windows, and I will quickly go to the debug perspective to start my debugging. So here click on plus, select database debug perspective, or this debug perspective also you can choose. Click on OK. System will open the debug perspective in SAP HANA. And now you can just click on debug button. Before you start debugging, let's set up our breakpoints just the way we do it in ABAP programs. So double click on these statements, whichever statements you would like to debug, and click on this bug icon once again. It will start the debugging with that debugging configuration which you have created. And in that debug configuration, if you remember, you have provided the value of the max product ID as 25,000. So system would do that. Okay, why it didn't start it? Yes, it's coming. Yes, you can see the breakpoint has hit now. So it will also show you on the top all the parameter values. See, max quantity value supplied was 25,000 from your debug configuration. So debug configuration is typically used to debug a procedure in SAP HANA Studio provided with a fixed set of values. And now you can debug line by line. So I can press F6, it will go to the next line and you would see what has been loaded in LT sold products. 9 records have loaded. You can right click and also say open data preview. It will show you the list of or the amount of data which was selected. You can see these are all the product GUIDs which were selected. Now if I come down, next it will select all the product texts. I say execute. It has selected now the texts. Maybe I'll just directly jump to the last statement and show you what intermediate results have been produced by far. So if you look at your data structures, you see all of them have got 9 records for products, even your LT products. This here is your output table products. It has got your final set of records, open data preview, and just come down. You would see all the products have been loaded over here. Okay, so this is how you can locally debug in SAP HANA Studio your procedure. We will see in upcoming chapter how to debug from ABAP. So that's called external debugging. So from, let's say, an ABAP program, user is calling your procedure. Let's say Fiori app is calling a OData service. That OData service is calling an ABAP managed data procedure, and that ABAP managed data procedure is calling a HANA database procedure, or using ADBC you're calling, or using procedure proxy you're calling a procedure. How can you debug that? We will see that in upcoming chapter. Okay. So what is short key? Where do you see short key, Charu? I didn't get it. Where is the short key field? I didn't get it. Okay, it's the same thing. F6 is for the next statement, and sorry, F10 is for the next, F6 for the next statement, F8 for the F5 for the step into, F6 for the next statement, F7 is for out of the step, and F8 for execute, resume. Yeah, like a BAP, absolutely same thing. So that's how you debug a procedure locally in SAP HANA Studio. So you have to define a debug configuration to start the debugging. Very important, because there is no way you pass the parameter value. It should be done by the debugging configuration. The configuration is nothing but the set of inputs defined for your procedure for the debugging. I switch back to HANA development perspective. Okay, so let's move on to our OIA scenario. And now we will be coding our OIA scenario step by step into HANA DB. Now, what I would like to optimize. So if you remember, we have created this use case for Mr. James, where he would like to also mark a particular customer who have exceeded a threshold limit of average number of open days and average the total amount, gross amount of the salary, right? So for that to do, we will also now do in a different way. We will basically create a small customizing database table first of all in SAP HANA, and this customizing table, I will hold the client value, I will hold the username, I will hold the maximum amount value what has been exceeded, I will hold the maximum number of days since when the invoice is open, and also I will hold a value called currency in which it would we would be converting the amount. So Mr. James will go, or even n number of users can be there in your company, like Mr. James working in some department. There will be so many other people in the company. So they will mention for, let's say, 001 client for my username Anubhav. If the amount exceeds 1 million, let's say, or let's say, you know, 1 lakh, and if the number average number of days exceeds 420, then that customer should be marked as X, high risk customer. And I want all the values to be converted into euros. That is what my used case is. In the same client, if Mr. James logs in, so if the value exceeds more than more than 5 lakhs and average days exceeds 445, then for Mr. James it's a high risk customer. So you see that based on the number of users, based on users perspective, they will identify who is the critical customer, who is the high risk customer or not. So Mr. James would probably use this parameter, but I will use this parameter to find high risk customers. Okay, so that this kind of flexibility can only be given when you create a customizing table, and when you run it at runtime, you read which user has defined what customizing, and accordingly you mark the customers with their risk levels. Correct. So we will be defining this customizing table in the database, and we will be filling it with some information. Okay, so let's do that. Yesterday I also showed you writing some SQL command to read the current user information as well as current client information in the system. So this is called user context. So let me first show you querying a user context. So you'll say select session context, and I just put client value and then put comma session context, and then we have something called application user. So this will tell me what is the value in SAP HANA for this, for my user right now. and what is the client in SAP and I am connected with. So I press execute, and you can see it's 001 Anubhav as the user. So I will create a customizing table, and in that I will maintain the entry as client as 001 and Anubhav. So at runtime, I will use these parameters to query the data from my customizing table. Let's define a customizing table in SAP HANA DB. So what we will do is we say create table, the schema name SAP A4H is a schema dot our table name, let's say DP underscore cust. That's a table I'm creating. What are all the fields I want? I want a client field. Now remember guys, every table in SAP system is client dependent table. Majority of the application tables are client dependent. You have mandate field. You are here at the database level. In the database, you can actually see data from all clients, correct? You can see data from all clients. So whenever you're writing a procedure, make sure that you also consider client field in your SQL queries. Otherwise, it is going to do a join or aggregation whatsoever you're doing, considering even the client data, and the other client data would be considered in the output, which should not be a good approach. Okay, so client handling is very important when you're writing direct SQL procedures in SAP HANA. This is also one advantage of disadvantage of writing direct procedure in SAP HANA, rather writing procedure in AMDP. AMDP, when you do it, you're actually writing SQL code in ABAP program. So it takes care of client automatically. But here you have to take care of it yourself. Let's create the database table varchar3 for my client field. Next field I want is ID, user ID basically. Let's say varchar10 for the user ID. Next field I want is currency code. In what currency I would like to convert. This user would like to convert all the values in euro. Mr. James want the output always in US dollars, right? So that's what your currency field. I am also putting it in the customizing table. So n varchar 5, let's say, that's currency code, and then max gross amount. Let's use it as decimal 15, 2, and then max days open decimal maybe 3, 2 or 3, 3, whatever you like, you can put it. And then you can say, what is the primary key of my database table? So one user for one client, only one customizing is allowed. So client together with user ID becomes the primary key of this database table. Let's execute it. This database table gets created. Yes, finally, I will open Notepad and keep putting these queries. So step 1, we had created a customizing table for OIA scenario. So this makes it easy for us to now read the customizing directly from DB and provide the result to the user with even customer tagging, which you were doing actually in application layer earlier by looping at your item, comparing it, and then marking the customer relevant for high risk or low risk. Okay, which you will do it now here directly. Let's insert a record in this table now. So I use this table name and I'll just fire an insert statement. You can also do an easy thing in SAP HANA if you're working directly with database. Go to your database table, expand the tables, and actually the database table and generate the insert statement automatically from the database. So if you come here to tables, you can actually find your table now in this schema dp underscore cust is the table name which we created, dp underscore cust. You can find the table and generate an insert statement automatically. So HANA Studio will generate the insert statement for you. You don't have to write it. So I just apply a filter, dp underscore cust. It applies a filter on my data tables. Let's check it out. There you go. It's applying the filter now. We should see in a minute our database table over here on the screen. It's still searching. Yes, we found it. Right click on the table and say generate insert statement. It will create automatically a SQL query to insert the data into the database table, and I just fill in the data in that according to my columns which I had. So first column was the client column. So let's say for 001 for user Anubhav, my currency code conversion should be done in the euros, all the currency. Cross amount, let's say if it exceeds 5 zeros, and then if the days exceeds, let's say 420, or let's say 425 days, if it exceeds, then that customer is a high risk customer for me. Okay, execute the statement. It should insert a record in your database table. Okay, it says numeric flow overflow has happened. Point, did we give it, how many characters we give? 3 characters. That's correct only. 0.00, let me see. No, it's not accepting it. What is the problem? Decimal 3 2, that's what I've given, correct only. Why it is not accepting it? Numeric overflow it's saying. Okay, maybe I will quickly recreate the table. Drop table dp underscore cust, recreate the table, and I'll use max days as integer and execute it. It should drop table, create table, and insert the record. Done, all 3 steps done together. Let's copy this and put it over here. So creating the customizing table and inserting the record. Make sure guys, when you are trying, please make use of your username over here. Okay, so if there are multiple users in your database, accordingly you can have multiple records. So for example, I'll also insert one more record for Mr. James, just to give you a heads up. So 125,000, and for him it's a high risk customer when it exceeded 480 days. Execute. You would see 2 records being inserted in our database table. Let's query the table and see those records. Customizing table, what an amazing concept. And run it. You're going to see 2 customizing entries. When Mr. James comes and run this procedure, which I'm going to write in near future, it will mark customers provided their amount exceeds this much and number of days exceeds this much. When I run it, it is going to consider this threshold, this as a threshold value. For Mr. James, it will convert it to euros. For me also, it will convert to euros. Similarly, let's say Deep or Charu or Varun or Tarun, anybody runs it, they can have their corresponding customizing entries. We will query the customizing table in the procedure, and accordingly we will define the customer with risk. So we can say where ID equals to, we can basically select now the user session underscore context, and it's a application user, and then it will give me just my record for customizing. You can see it's just giving me my record. And also consider the client in which I am running, session underscore context, and then say client. So it will give me the customizing now. So you can try all these queries one by one and then keep putting it in your procedure accordingly. There you go. You can see it's giving me the value. Okay, I will copy this. Let's start with our procedure for open item analysis scenario. So I come here, define our procedure. So create procedure. And before that, I also have to create an output structure in which I'm going to send the final output to the user. So let's define an output structure for our procedure with a table type. So I create a new table type, create type, type name ty underscore, let's say OIA underscore final output for my OIA scenario. What is that Mr. James wanted to see as table? That's going to be the columns here in this. So one will be company name, varchar 80. That's the first column. Then Mr. James wanted to see average open days. So average days open. How many days since when this is open? And maybe we keep it as decimal 3, or you can just keep it as integer also. Next, we will have currency code, and this is, remember, it will be converted currency code, final output currency code. in which user would like to see the data, and varchar of, let's say, 4. I'm just creating a table type now, guys. Sum of gross amount, and that's a decimal of 15 comma 2. And then we have finally the customer tagging, guys, which customers have been considered as high risk. So customer tagging as, let's say, n varchar x is just a flag, okay, and varchar of 1. That's your table type. Let's execute and see if this table type gets created. Finally, good. I can just copy this code after testing in our notepad. So step 2, create table type for final output. Step number 3. Next, let's look at this table type if it has been created over here. So I will go to procedures section, expand the table types which we have in the system. We should see ty underscore oia underscore final should be present over here. Here you go, ty oia final. That's your final output table type which you would like to return out of the procedure. Let's define the procedure now. So create procedure, get OIA, open item analysis scenario, and this is going to be very interesting. So I will just have an output parameter, final or var out, finally output parameter var output of my table type tyoia final. Okay, we will use both the techniques, guys, CE functions and SQL script. First, I will show you pure SQL script, and then I will move to CE functions, and we'll try to do the same example with CE functions. Okay, so that's my output parameter, and SQL security is this time invoker, then default schema, SAP ABAP for HANA schema as begin. Wow, end. And let's execute it if it gets created. No, there is some problem. See, I have forgot to define something. So some out variable is not assigned. Yes, you see I have created an output variable and this is not assigned to any value right now. What I will do, I just assign it to a dummy output just to showcase that how will your output look like. Okay, so let me just assign it to a very dummy output. So what I'll do is select uh, what I will do is I'll select company code. So let's remember the structure of this output. You need to remember the structure of your output. It's there in the notepad. So first is company name, average days open, currency code, sum of gross, tagging, correct? So company code, comma, I will just put a string literals as part of our columns. As and when we solve one puzzle, the values of one variable will keep on coming. So first is company name, second is average days open. Average days open, let me put it as, let's say right now 200, comma, currency code, let me hard code it to euro. Then third is sum of amount, let me put comma and put it like 1 lakh, 10 lakhs, whatever it is. Customer tagging as X from snwd underscore bpa table, and assign this to my final output. Just a demo output right now. It will give you hard coded values for all the business partner entries, but it will give you actually the company names. Sorry, not company code, company name. It's company name. Okay, let's run this, execute. Oops, another problem. Attribute name average open days different from attribute name 200. Okay, I have to put as, okay, as my variable name average days open, and this as currency code, because that's when it will map to the output parameter. This as average sum gross amount, and final X as customer. Step by step, guys, you got to build everything. You, if you try to build in one shot, it will not work. Step by step you have to build. So let's try this now, execute. Oops, again mistake. I'm bad in typos. There you go. You see your procedure got created. Let's run this procedure. At least see if your output is coming or not as you are expecting a little bit. So call the procedure and just put question mark execute, you're going to see some sample data coming out of the procedure, which means your table type is working absolutely fine. You see company names are coming, and these values are string literals right now, pretty much fixed data. As and when you will solve the puzzle one by one, these values will keep on coming. This is the best way to get started with a procedure. Define your table types, define your procedure, update a hard-coded data into it, see if it works, and then solve one by one puzzle step by step. So now we will solve first the puzzle of this gross amount by using the invoice header and invoice items table. So let me show you quickly the drag query. First of all, writing a query on the invoice items table. So what you remember our database tables? So we have basically three tables in the system. So the first table what we have is, it has the business partner data, business partner data. The second table has information about invoice header. Then we have information about invoice items. So in this invoice item, you have the information about what is the amount which was sold and what is the currency in which that product was sold. So you know that our company is a multi international business, and we have products being sold in across different countries in different currencies. Okay, so what happens here? The multiple same item gets sold in different currencies. So your amount and currency, gross amount summation and currency has to come from items table. Your information about open invoice has to come from invoice status. Yeah, payment status has to come from this table, and your business partner information has to come from this table, company name basically. So these three tables are involved in the game. We're going to join these three tables and get the total amount per currency for a given for the business partner. Okay, so that is what we're going to do for every customer. For unpaid invoices, what was the amount in what currency? These three tables are going to participate into the join. Let's go ahead and fire a join now to look at an output. Uh, Basically first on these two tables, and then we'll join with the third table also. So another interesting thing is you have a buyer GUID field here which is joining these two tables. So buyer GUID in this table is joining with the node key of BP table. So here this node key is joining. This is the join condition, and here this particular table's node key is joining with parent key of this table. That's the join condition between these tables, parent key. So first let's join this node key with parent key between these two tables. I'll also just connect them so that you can remember this data model. So I just put it here. This is the join. Let me increase the width of the page, sorry, width of the line. So just let's see if I can do it. Yes, correct. And then here this guy connects to the buyer quit. So we have data in three tables. So first let's connect header and in items table to see the invoices. So select, I'm going to fire a buyer quit from my header table. So I just put header dot buyer quit, and then comma, gonna get the gross amount. So I'm gonna sum the gross amount per product, currency code from items table, and the gross amount should also come from items table. So item dot from first my header table snwd so invoice header as hdr inner join snwd so invoice item table as item. What is the join condition? My header table dot node key should match with item table parent key. Remember, very important point, you should consider the client. Okay, very important, you should consider the client field. You should also consider the invoices which you're selecting are open invoices. So where payment status from header table is equals to blank, and client is equals to, right now I'm hard coding it to 001. You can actually use session context. This is real time, guys. This is truly real time business scenario. And then we have a group by. The columns which are not participating in the aggregation should be coming as part of group by. So let's get this buyer GUID, comma, currency code. Let's look at the output executed. What do we see? Issue. Client column is ambiguously defined. So I have to put client should be considered from header table. You can also check it from the item table anyways. Execute. Voila. You can see for every supplier, for every buyer GUID, total of all the invoices are coming in in currencies. So currently in our system, we have data all in USD. So for every supplier, actually, it's just giving one record. But imagine in cases where you have data for multiple currencies in items table, it will actually show two entries per supplier with total gross in a particular currency. Okay, very important for you to notice. So that's our first join. Okay, that's our first join. We can take this join now and take it to our procedure, and slowly we will build it. Remember, slowly you got to build it. So define a table lt gross, total gross. That's your first query. You had put it here. Perfect. Now one important and critical thing which I missed, it I forgot to read customizing table. And if you read customizing table, truly you can actually manage this client field also from there. Correct. So let's also add the customizing table record. Lt customizing equals to, just read your customizing table. What was it? It is dp cust. So select start from dp cust. Okay, I think I already put it in the notepad, the statement for reading the customizing table. Here it is. Oops, I didn't put. Is it kept somewhere else? No, it's not. Let's select it then. dp underscore cust, where client is equals to session context, and then say client field, and ID of the user is session context, and then application user. Execute it. It's going to return you the record based on my user ID. What is customizing maintained for Anubhav user? Put it in the procedure. That's your customizing. This will be helpful for you for the marking purpose. Okay. Now what we will do is basically we will read all the values from the customizing table, and we are going to assign it to variables. So let me declare lots of variables, local scalar parameters in our procedure, so that these parameters can be useful for us for the purpose of using them later point of time. So declare lv client as varchar of 4, declare sorry, lv total or maximum days as integer, declare lv max amount as decimal, 15 comma 2, what is that user expects. Declare what else we have, currency to be converted, conversion, what currency you would like to convert, as varchar of 4. What else do we want? Enough parameters, or do we want more? Yeah, I think enough. So is that what you have in customizing? Client user ID, we don't need it anymore. Currency code, max amount, and max days. So 1 2 3 4 5 parameters. We also need the ID actually. User ID, declare lv user varchar of 10. Let's take these values into scalar variables. So select star. Instead of star, now I'm going to put the parameters from here. Client ID, currency code, max gross amount, and max days. So select them. client. User ID I don't need. I need currency code, max gross amount, max days open, and I will place them in two variables. Which are all the variables I want to place them into my scalar variable. So client will go in this scalar variable. So remember, you just have to put it client value. Next parameter is currency code to be converted according to customizing table. Next parameter will be according to the amount over here. And next one is maximum number of days. That's your reading from customizing table into scalar variables. Since you are firing here a query based on primary key columns, you considered already your primary key, it's going to return you one single record. Okay. So it's going to return you one single record because you already considered your primary key fields over here. Okay, great. So after that, let's save this and run the procedure just to make sure everything goes smooth. I just quickly run it. I think I have to drop the procedure first. So let's drop the procedure. Execute. Again, a problem. Max days open is a problem. I think we don't have a column called max days open. Let's look at the structure. It's average days open, not max days open. Sorry, just max days column, not max 7 days. Execute. Yes, procedure got created successfully, guys. So your customizing table entries have been read out. Now here, this client, you can use your scalar variable LV client. You don't have to get every time the user context of client. Okay, you can use your scalar variable of the client over here. So this will give you the total amount in different currencies, summation of total amount in different currencies from this table. Okay, now this table you got to join with business partner table to get the company code information. So let's go ahead and get the company code information based on this. So what do we do next is we will just join this one with our business partner table. So this is going to give you the invoice amount unconverted. Okay, unconverted amount. Select. We will select fields from our BP table, the company code. We will also select the BP ID from the company, the business partner table. And then we are going to select all the fields from here once again. These fields we are going to select again. So this is again as gross amount. This one is as currency code. And this one is my as buyer quit. Okay, so let's select now the values from these three tables. So now I have my item dot buyer guide, item dot gross amount, and then item dot currency code from my SNWD BPA table, inner join, and this should be as BP, inner join my this table here, this gentleman as item, both the tables on BP dot node key matches with buyer GUID from item. Ultimately, I don't need the buyer GUID in the output, so I can exclude this from here. So that's my next join. Now it will give me unconverted data in different currencies, total amount per purchaser, okay, per customer, total amount in different currency, unconverted data. I need to now do a currency conversion in my SQL script. For that reason, now we will be using our CE function. So let me just quickly run this. There is another problem here. bp.company code is not there. It's company name actually. Just to be sure that this one works fine. Yeah, correct. In here we are okay. So we will now use a CE function to basically convert this unconverted currency amount to a common currency. Okay, so let's apply a CE function in SAP HANA, which will do the currency conversion for us. So there is a ready-made CE function available called CE underscore conversion. The moment you apply CE and underscore conversion, it will convert a data from a table to a common currency. So I will use the CE function CE underscore conversion. In this, first you have to pass your input. This is what my unconverted amount is hold inside this table. Next, I have to provide the properties related to the conversion of my data. And then finally, which field I am applying the conversion on. Okay. All these three arguments I have to pass in my CE function. So first is the input where you have all the conversion values. Second, which field will be converted. So gross amount is the field which will be converted. Okay. So this is very easy, two arguments. And now here in this, you have to pass all the conversion properties separated by comma. So first conversion property is family. So what is the family of conversion? So family of conversion is currency. It's not a unit conversion, it's a currency conversion. So that's the family. Method, which method will be used to convert this currency value? It should be used the typical ERP method to convert the currency. Then what will be the steps in conversion? Do you need to round off the values? Yes, we need to round off. So for that you should say shift. First shift the values, convert the values, and then finally shift back the values. Okay, so basically round off my values after conversion. That's what exactly I am saying. Shift, convert, and shift back. These three properties I have specified. What are all the other properties we need to give? We need to give the client, which client should be considered for currency conversion. So that's the LV client variable, which we had already taken on the top. Next is the source unit column, which is the column which has the source unit of conversion, whether the input data is USD, JPY, INR. So that's the source unit of conversion. So source unit column in the database structure. This is the data table which we are passing to this. In this, which column contains the source currency? So it's the currency code column that I will pass it here. And then we will say reference table. Sorry, reference date. What is the date on which should be considered as a reference for currency conversion? So that is, I can put today's date. So let's create a today's date variable in SAP SQL script. Maybe I'll just create declare LV date as date variable, and I'm going to get the current date in my date variable. How am I going to get that? It's very simple. In SAP HANA, you can easily get current date, which is select current date from dummy and assign that to LV date over here like this. That's it. And that's going to be your currency conversion date, reference date. And there will be a new column which system is going to create automatically, which is the target currency. So output unit column. What will be the name of the new column which system will create automatically for you with the output currency? So I can say currency code conversion. So it's getting too much for many of you. People are leaving the room. I can see that. But don't panic, guys. This is what real time is. This is what real time is. That's how it is going to be the real time. So that's the currency conversion function in SAP HANA. You have to put everything manually, how you will convert your data. Okay. And this final data comes in the another table. I will take it local table. So LT converted amount equals to this. That's your finally converted amount. But remember, it is still not aggregated. Now you have got all the values in a common currency. So you have to summation that value because you have all the values converted to a common currency. So you just sum the values. So I say LT amount common again, select sum of gross amount as gross amount and my new column currency code converted as my final currency code from my converted table. And of course, I have to select my business partner ID, BP underscore ID. Also select company name. First requirement is fulfilled, guys. Now we can assign this value directly to our output. So let me just do that. Instead of a hard coded value, let's assign the value from this. So I will use now my converted amount table, and I say select a company name from here. Average days open, I will still keep it hard coded, but currency code I've already got it. So I will choose currency code, and then I have sum of gross amount here. This will come here, and still marking customer tagging as a X by default. Is that clear to everybody? So I'm still assigning now my variable to output. Your first requirement is fulfilled. You've got the data aggregated summation of invoices which are open for customers. You have got that converted to a common currency, which is in this case for my customizing entry, it's euros. And then finally you aggregated the summation of gross amount in a local table, and from there you are assigning to your output variable. Let's execute the procedure and see if you get data for customer. That is a problem. Scalar type is not allowed. LV date, line number 12. So I think the problem is here. Line number 12 is this here. This is the problem. It's not able to read the values. So I know this, what to do. This into your variable. Execute. Another problem. Variable depends on unassigned variable LV today. Okay, I got it. So you can see here we have used LV today variable. There is nothing called LV today. It's LV date. Execute again. Group by having an issue in line number. Aggregation function is used, but no group by has been done. So where did we did the group by? Here we did it. So we use buyer GUID. That's okay. What is the line number? 37. So there's a group by in line number 37 here. Here we have done a group by. Here we have done a summation, but we didn't apply any group by. So let's do a group by with BP underscore ID, company name, and currency code. Of course, it will be a common currency, guys, so it will come up properly. Let's run this. Oops. Okay, group by. Run it. Invalid column name currency code. Okay, why it's saying invalid currency code? Okay, it's converted currency. That's the real column name actually. Let's run it again. Return type mismatch for company name different from the BPID. Okay, you can see here the return type is mismatching. So whatever is your return type company name, this one currency code gross amount, there is a return type mismatch. Attribute name company different from attribute BPID. There is a problem, guys, here. I think we can just select company name from here. Not required to select BPID at all. And try this. Okay, another set of issues. Return type mismatch for LT conv amount and varchar line number 37 column number 2. See, so many issues are coming. So LT converted amount, there is a problem in the return type mismatch. What is this issue? Let me clear the console and retry. Could not execute LV com amount, SQL syntax error, incorrect syntax near LT conv amount. So here there is a syntax error now, guys. What did we do wrong? Can anybody guess what is going wrong? There is a syntax error in CE conversion function. LT converted amount, we had put the input, comma, family, method, steps for conversion, client, LV client source, column, currency code is correct, reference date, LV date, gross amount. No, this is the column name in this case. We are not using a variable actually. This is the column name which needs to be converted. Okay. So I have to just say gross amount, just to be very sure that this is what is being treated as a gross amount over here. Let me try one more time. That's the problem when you write too big code in procedures. Return type mismatch in LT conv amount. Okay, let's see. LT converted amount. Let's take this as a different variable, guys. So LT, instead of LT conv amount, LT total amount. And from here, I'm going to send it to the output. Okay. I choose a different variable now after calculating the summation. So LT conv amount contains the converted currency amounts. And after doing this, I'm just sending it in a different variable. And from that different variable, I'm sending it to the output table. Incorrect syntax near var. So company name, we have it. Gross amount, we have it. Currency code converted as currency code, we have it. There's a syntax error coming now here. Company code 200 as average days. LT total amount. This should be okay. Why it's giving me an error? Anybody? Do you see any issue with our code? There's a syntax error which it is coming. Okay, let me just remove these two lines and see till here if it works fine. Till here if it works fine, let's see. No. Something has to be assigned to output. Okay, fine, we'll do that. Company name 200 is a fixed value to average days. Currency code, here we are anyways getting the currency code in this. Gross amount as sum of gross amount, access customer tagging, and from this table. That's all fine. CE conversion, what do you see an issue, Charu, with CE conversion function? I don't see any issue there. Source unit column, that's correct only. It's currency code. You can see here we are anyways getting the currency code column. See, source unit column. You can also just use an as here as currency code. That's okay. Gross amount. What typo have we done? Oh wow, it works, guys. It was just the problem with the name. You see, the problem was with the name. Alias name was not defined for these parameters, the selection list, and now you can see it has created my procedure. Let's go it. I'm waiting for to see the output now for at least my total gross amount in a common currency. Let's look at it now. I call the procedure, and this var output earlier was giving hard-coded data. Now let's see, execute it. It fails. There is a problem. Plan operator currency unit conversion, no target unit set for conversion. No target unit set for conversion. Currency code is given here. Source is given, target unit. No target unit. That is what it is here. Absolutely, we have forgot to specify which currency we should convert it. It should be based on your customizing table. So we had already got it in a variable over here. You can see currency to be converted. That's what I have forgot to specify in conversion. Correct, you're right. So let's give target unit equals to your variable where you have which currency it should be converted to. So we have done in our customizing table for euro conversion. Let's go ahead and run this once again. Got executed. Let's come back, execute the procedure, and wow, there you go. You can see now the data from the database table with the currency converted output. See, this is the value for each customer now for currency converted values. Perfect. Did we consider client and did we consider open invoices? Let me check quickly. Oops. Yes, we did. You can see we consider the payment status as blank and also the client field as the current client. Perfect. This is perfect, guys. Now let's go ahead and solve the problem for average number of days also using SQL script. Wow, what a big example. Please code this line by line yourself. There is nothing called winning here if you copy paste this code and get the output. You have to draw, you have to write every single line of code like this, which is truly called real time. This is what truly called real time SQL script. Okay, how to check available CE function in the system, how to check property of functions. I will come to that point, Anshuman. I will show you available CE functions in the system and their documentation. Where can you find it? Just hold on for 2 minutes. We will move completely CE function based implementation. I will show you that. Okay. So we have got now the total gross amount, and I'm curious to also compare this with ABAP output. So whatever we were seeing in the ABAP, let me just quickly do that. I'm not sure whether it will match or not. If it won't match, maybe we have to put some more effort to make it match. But let's at least check it if this is the correct output. I will validate the output. So log into my ABAP system, and then let's see quickly running the standard report program. For this, I will also sort my output which is coming from my SQL procedure. So I create order by company name, rerun the procedure, recreate the procedure basically, and come here and re-execute procedure. So Avental 1903797.06, that's the amount. Let's go to SE38 in SAP and try to see from ABAP how much time. RSOIA Bupa figures, that's the standard report SAP gives you. Execute this report and let's see the output from ABAP for your results. So maybe I just get it with advanced OpenSQL, and 1903797 for Avental. Is it matching, people? Do you see it's matching or not? Yes or no? Did we code correctly or not? Is this matching? Yes or no? Of course, perfect. In first hit, Anubhav finally able to get the output which is right. Okay, good. I'm very happy. I was very skeptical whether my output will match or not. At least sum of gross amount, converted gross amount to euros. You see, the database table has USD, and this amount is definitely matching. It's a breakthrough for us. Pure SQL script coding. Okay, let's do it for average number of days also. Let's go back and do it for average number of days. For that, I will take you step by step. So in this average number of days calculation, it's little tricky. Why? Because you now have to subtract current date minus the creation date of invoice to get the average days. So for that, lots of conversion needs to be done on creation date to a timestamp, and then you have to got to subtract both the timestamp from each other with the current timestamp minus the date on which the invoice was created. So let me show you that step by step in a SQL query, and then we will put that query in our procedure. So first of all, let me select created at from SNWD uh, sales order invoice header table when the invoice was created. Let me just run this and then see. You can see the value created at invoice header table. It's something of this sort. This is actually a decimal value. Okay, it's a timestamp stored in the decimal format. The first thing you need to do is bring this timestamp into a format, removing the commas to the pure pure time format, date and time format. So for that, there is a function in SAP HANA called left. Apply this on the decimal column which you have it, and put left comma 14. 14 means y mm dd minutes, seconds and hours. So that's why 14 level. Remove all the commas and bring it to 14 level. So execute this. You can see commas have been removed from the decimal and it has got it to the pure time in the time format. Now you can see this 22, 23. So you have to also now bring it to the exact timestamp format of hour, minutes and seconds. So for that you will use another function on top of it called to timestamp. This is real business, guys. This is what you got to do truly in the system when you're writing SQL scripts. So YYYY, MM, DD, and then you have hours, minutes, and seconds. Let's execute it. That's your value of date and time. This value you now subtract from the current date and time. Okay, so I want the result to be in seconds. Okay, now how do I get current time? So let me just put this code into notepad. So I just put snippet so that you guys can understand. So this is the current time, and basically the time from the database table converted to timestamp, and now I want the current time. So you can use actually now from dummy. This will give you the current time. Execute and you will see it will give you the current time in the SAP system. But this is again not matching with the time which we got from database from our table. Because if you want two numbers to be subtracted, they should be in the same format. So this time has to be also formatted to a timestamp. So I have to now apply another conversion on top of it to timestamp. But before that, I need to bring the time into a time zone, which is Central European time. So you can do local to UTC function and use now comma your time zone Central European time, let's say, because I'm converting everything to euros, and for Europe it's Central European time, and then bring it into timestamp to timestamp, and same format like my table output is gonna come. So it's in YYYY MMDD hour, minutes and seconds. So let's do this, execute, and oops, some problem, we did some mistake, guys. So local to UTC, now this function ends here. To timestamp. Did we miss one more? Yes, I guess. No, something wrong. Something wrong. We are missing something. Actually, we don't need this YYYYMM thing. Not required. Not required at all. Just do this. Just do this. This is more than enough to convert it to the timestamp. Execute. Yes. Now this is converted to the correct timestamp format. Now this subtracted with your created date, and I want data in seconds. So there are two functions in SAP HANA to calculate difference between 2 days. And so one is calculation in terms of days. How many days are the difference between two dates? Okay. You can also calculate the difference at seconds level. So I will show you first calculating based on days. So there is a function called in SAP HANA to calculate difference between two different dates. So it's called days between. Okay. So I will take this one, go to my query. I will paste this guy over here, and let me bring back to my old query and calculate the days between. Okay. So let me just go back. I'll show you first. Select days between, and now here I have to pass X date and Y date, two arguments. So first I will put my first date, which is the time coming from my database table. Okay. Then Y is my date, which is current date timestamp, and a difference between them. So days between will calculate from SNWD underscore BPA table. Let's run this. It's gonna give you the days between these two dates per invoice. Sorry, it should be my invoice header table. Sorry. Whew. Run this execute it, and you see the days between this is coming. Correct? Perfect. Now, if you want to go to very granular level, you can actually calculate a difference between two different dates based on seconds also. So you can use seconds between. Now it will give you second difference between two different dates. Execute it, and that's it. So can anybody tell me, if I want to convert seconds into dates, what will I do? Anybody? Let's see who has idea of time. How to convert seconds into days? What do you do to convert seconds into days? Divide by 3600. Incorrect answer. In one day you have 24 hours. In 1 hour you have 60. Absolutely, Shilpa is right. In one day you have 24 hours. So divide by 24 hours. In 1 hour you have 60 minutes. And in 1 minute you have 60 seconds, because your numerator is in seconds. So to convert it to a date, you got to use this. And remember, the invoices are, there are invoices which are paid also by your customer. So you have to put where clause and say payment status is equals to unpaid invoice only. Run it. You're gonna see the difference for every invoice. 739, 739, something, something coming. This seems to be closer to my output here. Yeah, I hope this should do the magic for us. Let's go ahead, but don't care about output. Let's go ahead. So this gives me the difference between 2 days. Okay, in terms of days, this is what is giving me the difference for my open invoices. Now, per customer, if you want it, you have to also select your buyer GUID from the table. So select buyer GUID. Okay, and then this date as total days. Okay, this days date at total days, that's what you select. Copy this and put it in your procedure. So first you will get total days, actually days per invoice. Okay, per invoice you are getting total days. Now you join this with the BP table. So already we selected something from BP. No, we already did a join here with sales order, actually. So let's call the join with the BP table one more time. To consider this buyer GUID table, join them and get the company code information. Okay, or maybe get the BP ID information, actually. Okay, so we'll say select BP dot BP underscore ID, and then we will just get this guy, which is total days, and we will get immediately the average of total days, actually. Okay, average of total days from SNWD BPA table as BP, inner join this table. Remember guys, though it looks like a big procedure, lot of coding, lot of output input parameter, but HANA does it very well, because HANA does massive parallelization of these operations. As much as parallelization HANA can do, it will do it. And this is what HANA is meant for. This is what HANA is built for. I am not doing anywhere select star. I am writing exact columns to pull the data, and HANA can do this much better as compared to your ABAP. This is called real-time HANA, ABAP on HANA coding, actually. Okay, inner join on this as days, day, okay, as my day on join condition bp dot bpid equals to my day dot bp underscore id. Okay, actually, yeah, that's enough. You're gonna get this in now. Average days have come, guys. Average days have come finally to you. Now, what magic you got to do? Join these average days with your total amount table based on business partner ID. Okay, so that join can be done here itself. You can actually call this, and instead of this hard coded value, now you can get the days. So as average days, so you can use this average days over here, average open days, and these two tables you can join with average days based on BPID. and this is as AMT, and this is as days, or my day. And then let's join them. Amount dot bp underscore id equals to my day dot bp underscore id. That's my join condition. And order by the company name, that's perfect. Join condition is also in place. Number of average days are calculated, currency code converted, sum amount converted, customer tagging is default as X right now. Join between these two tables. Of course, this alias name has to be provided over here for the values to be pulled out properly from both the tables. And then of course my day is pulling up this average days information. Let's run the procedure. Hopefully they should get activated. I execute. Yes, oops, some error. Let's see what's the error. Create procedure, SQL security, invoker default schema, invalid column name, myday.bpid. There is no column called myday.bpid. I missed it somewhere here. Yes, execute. myday.bpid, not accepting, guys. It's not accepting myday.bpid. It's actually treating this my day over here. I actually don't want to use this. Maybe I'll use a different value, average day, and use that over here. Different variable name I'm using. Now still it is giving line number 260, 47 line number. Some problem is there. So bp.bpid, snwd Hold on, Shilpa. I will answer your question. Is this buyer ID? No, it's not buyer ID, guys. In BPA table, if you see BPA table has BPID column. LT total days doesn't have, kya? Let me see what you're saying. LT total days per invoice doesn't have BPID. LT total days per invoice here. Okay, correct. You're right. Here we don't have BPID selected actually. But that's not required, Charu. If you see, we are actually joining this guy already here. Okay, this one doesn't have BPID. You're right. So it's actually node key join. Join will be done on node key and buyer GUID actually. This is the correct join condition. We are joining the GUIDs, not the BPID. Let me run this again. Incorrect syntax near BP. This is too much. Now here it is causing an issue. BP node key equals to buyer GUID. This join condition is not working. That's my BPA table as my day buyer GUID we have selected here from top. So this buyer GUID I put it here as my day. bp.node key is the primary key. In BP table we have node key actually. You can see that we had also used it here somewhere. See this node key we had used na. See BP table has node key actually. We are missing something. Inner join this table as my day from snwd bpa table bp.node key equals to this. It should work. Let me clear console and try one more time. Group by is having a problem. We didn't mention group by, guys. See here, we are selecting it BPID and doing an aggregation here. Average we are doing. We have to group by BPID. That's the missing point. Invalid column AMT.ppid in line number 53. Now there's some another problem. This AMT. Average day. AMT is what? Amount. This is the amount field. AMT dot currency code is not there. How can it be possible? This is the total amount thing. I am missing something. Gross amount, currency code, AMT dot. It's saying now AMT dot currency code is not there. Same thing was working earlier. Average days. Alias name. Let me put alias name for everything. I think that's the issue. As sum of gross amount, X as customer tagging. Correct. I had put it. Still it is showing an issue in line number 55 actually. We are missing something. Comma after currency code. We had put it. We had put it, guys. That's not the issue. Amount dot company name. That's the problem with SQL script. Once you're stuck, you are stuck actually. So here LT total amount. This is the total amount. Here we have company name, gross amount, and currency code from this table. Are we getting BPID? See guys, we have not even selected the BPID from above table, and here we are joining based on BPID these two tables. How will it work? That's the problem. So this LT total amount doesn't have a BPID actually. Okay, it doesn't have a BPID, and we're joining here based on BPID, so we got to also select the BPID in the LT total amount actually. So let me just get the BPID also here into this game so that these two tables can be joined together. Okay, and this has to also come from the top converted amount. It is not here, and it should also come from here, BP dot BP ID as BP underscore ID. It has to also come from top, and then this join is possible. Execute, duplicate attribute, or it was already there. Yes, it was already there. No problem then. Then we are good. Let's run this. Hopefully it should work. There you go. You can see finally it's working. And I had not considered here in this query only payment status, but I should also consider client to be on safer side, because when you're working with database, you should manage the client yourself. Remember, very important. It worked. Let's run and compare our data. Execute it. Do we see the proper results? 751 for Avental. What's the data in ABAP? Perfect match. Congratulations. Your end-to-end OIA scenario finally with SQL script works absolutely matching result with the standard SAP program. That's what exactly real SQL script. Very tough job, guys, when you do it at real time. Very tough job, including currency conversion, including everything what we wanted, the amount field, the average number of days open with code pushed down to database, sitting very close to SAP HANA DB. Can we compare the time? Okay, we can do that. So you can see 167 milliseconds it took here in ABAP. What it took in ABAP in HANA? Fetched 38 row 346 millisecond, and here it's 167 milliseconds. Actually, it seems like in HANA it is more. Okay, in HANA it is more. Server processing time was 98 millisecond, and here server processing, I mean the time was 167. So I can actually look at this figure. I would say HANA writing with SQL script is better, but we don't know. Once we consume this data now in ABAP, I will show you how to use this procedure in SAP ABAP, calling this procedure from ABAP system, and then we will really see the time. How much time are we saving when we do this with code push down? But still there is one interesting thing which is pending, your threshold value. See, customer tagging by default it's all X. I have to also manage that. So what do we do for that? You see, by default I am making it X all the time. I should make it X only when it exceeds threshold. So for that I have a nice logic for us. We should write case statement. That's the real power of SAP HANA. We should say case when my gross amount which I have it here. This one, gross amount, is greater than the threshold amount from customizing table. Where is my customizing table? Here it is. Maximum amount, this one. So this amount is greater than that, and my number of average days is also greater. Number of average days here, if it is more than that, okay, if this condition satisfy, then you should return it as X. Okay, then the value should be X, else it should be blank. Okay, and as customer tagging column. Now you will see magic, guys. This is also now a code push down into database using case statement. Earlier you were looping in application layer to determine this tagging, but now with this customizing table, it's a pure code push down. It's so flexible based on every user in your SAP system. It determines the customizing for that user. It does the tagging. For Mr. James, different output, for me different output based on our customizing data. Okay, let's execute it. Now what value I had maintained for my user, I don't know, need to check it quickly. So select our customizing table, select star from, what was the table? It was dp cust. It is 1 lakh, I guess, 1 lakh euros. For me it's 1 lakh euros for 25 days. So let's see if it marks it correctly. I have to re-execute, create the procedure. Syntax error again, incorrect this from statement, end as customer tagging. Okay, I had put a comma at the end, not required. Run it again. Yeah, got created. Let's run it, guys, and see what are all it marks. It tags it for me. Everything it is tagging, that is because it is exceeding the number of days and amount also. Let me increase the amount value in my database table for my record. Instead of 1 lakh, make it 10 lakh. Okay, 6 zeros I have to put. So update the table and set the max amount. The column name for that is maximum gross amount equals to 160, 1 million I have to put, where ID is equals to Anubhav. Update my table. See, this is what people will teach on internet. This is what they call SQL script. I have seen tutorial of a trainer. In one entire session, he is teaching update statement. who will who will show who will show you this? Very difficult. Nobody wants to get into it because it's so complex. Even trainer get confused when trainer is writing the code. You have to practice so hard in SQL script to achieve such results which matches with your standard output, and that's when you truly become an ABAP on HANA developer, not by writing a simple insert update delete. That is not called SQL script. Okay, so let's execute it and now see once again the procedure. Will it mark? Yes. Now you see wherever it amount exceeds this value, it's marking it as X. Let me also increase the bar for average number of days to 750, 755. Okay, we will see. So I will just update this also. The bar for my number of days, 755. Execute. So based on my customizing change, my output is changing. What could be better architecture than this? See, these are all the high risk customer for me now. So I don't have to make the code change. I just update my customizing table and accordingly my output is changed. See the beauty of our architecture, the beauty of our approach which we have taken now with customizing table. Mr. James will get same different output for his report. Okay, because his customizing table entry is different. Correct? That's how you should make it flexible so that your users can leverage the power of your code. Without any code change, you would see different outputs for different users, different business users. Let me put this entire procedure into our notepad. What a great example. Complete OIA scenario with customizing table. Hope you like it, guys. So many issues I faced, but finally was able to do it. If you are able to code this, you are a SQL developer. If you can code this complete scenario end to end yourself, you are a pure SQL developer then. Okay, let's put it here. Believe me, it was not easy. SQL script session 03. Saving it, done. Now coming to the CE functions. So we are all peculiar about what is CE functions. We already know that there is a concept called calculation engine functions in SAP HANA, and this is purely operated and executed by calculation engine in SAP HANA architecture. So there are a lot of CE functions available to do all these select queries, selection from tables, what we do doing here using select clause, we can do it using CE function, correct? So that's what exactly CE functions are. How do you get the information about them? So there are a lot of CE function, and if I start writing them, it will take whole night and we will not be able to complete. So what I'll do is I'll show you where can you find a very good reference for CE functions, and then we will try to convert the same example to CE function today itself. So what I will do is you have to go to internet and go to help.sap.com/HANA underscore appliance. Okay, type HANA underscore appliance, press enter. It will take you to SAP HANA platform wiki page basically, and there you will see complete SQL script reference guide. You see here SAP HANA SQL script reference. This is what I referred guys to teach you guys. This is what also I referred myself to learn SQL script 2 years back, and also to refresh my skills on SQL script to teach you guys. Okay, this is what I used. If you see, of course examples will not match, the examples which I'm using will not match with what it has, but you will see all the concepts which we learned are all covered in this guide. Now you see on the top the version which it is showing here is 2.0 HANA 2.0 SP2. That's why some syntax or some code which I showed you didn't work in this system, because our system is HANA 1.0 SP10. So some of these things, again be aware, some of these things what you see here in the guide will not work if you directly try them, which I also showed you some examples which did not work. So you can download this as a PDF, click on download, and this will download it as a PDF document to your computer. Now here only I will quickly show you the option for, you know, this thing SQL option for CE functions. So let me just come down. These are called plan operators, calculation engine plan operators. Here it is, this section. You can download a PDF, and here you will see very good documentation about all CE functions in a single page. Okay, so you can also see SQL equivalent for CE functions. So if you just want to select something from a database table, you can use CE column table. So let's try this. If you want to join two different tables, you can use this with join condition. If you want to uh, consume and view analytical view, you can use CEOLAP view and put your analytical view name. Okay, then you can see if you want to consume a calculation view, CE view. Similarly, if you want to apply a join between two different tables, CE join, left outer join, right outer join. If you want to just read the data from your table variables with selection of few columns from the table variable with select condition, you can see here is a condition. You can use CE projection. Remember, CE projection doesn't work on database tables. It only work on your table variables. Okay, you can do union, you can do conversion. This is what we have seen today to convert our data. There is nothing available directly in SQL. Okay, so there is always the CE conversion which you use. Okay, then we have CE aggregation to again do summation, average, mean, max. Those functions if you want to apply, you can use CE aggregation. CE calc, which is basically used for calculation engine functions. Directly you want to do something like calculate something, then you can use this. You can also you can apply a CE calc and basically do a typecasting of your variables into the into a particular data type. Okay, So these are all the different CE functions. Let's try some of the CE functions now in our example and convert some part of our code to CE function based code. Okay. So what I will do here, the first thing what we are doing here is selecting the data from our invoice header and invoice item table. So I will convert it to a CE function. So now I have to use two tables. One is for LT invoice header, and then I use CE underscore. One of the CE function to read data from database is CE column table, and you have to put first argument as your table name. So SNWD underscore sales order invoice header table. Okay, and then you have to put all the columns inside this one by one. You can also put your alias names as part of your columns in this. That is your CE um, column table. So now I will put here all the column names which I would like to select, like client column. I want it from invoice header table. I want what else we had used, yes, payment status we had used. Then I will also select here the node key from this table. So these are all the three columns I'm selecting from my invoice header table. Then comes is invoice items table. So LT invoice items table. Again CE column table. This is equivalent to select your columns from the database table. So SNWD SO invoice item. And then inside this, we will be selecting all the columns from the items table. So whatever the columns we need from items table, like client, you can also give an you can see this alias name. So you can say item underscore client. Like this, you can give alias name. You can choose parent key as invoice GUID, let's say. Then you can also choose, let's say, gross amount, okay, and currency code. These values I am selecting from this table, CE column table. Now, this will purely select all the data, all the records from the database table. Now, out of that data records, you want to apply some filter. You can actually do that quite easily. So suppose I want to apply a filter on the data which I've got in my local table. So I can say CE filter items equals to CE projection. This is always applied on a table, guys. So here you put your table, comma, and now you will again give your selection list, and then you will give your where condition in the third argument in single quotes. So here we will be giving our where condition. So my first where condition is the client field. So I will say item underscore client is equals to my client variable. Yeah. So that's my condition for the client. Maybe I will just do it for header. So filter header, and then header table I'm reading, and then in this I will also include the condition for my payment status. So column payment status is equals to single quote in SAP HANA. So that's four quotes are single quotes, actually representation of single quotes for comparing the data. So this will now give me all the header entries for a given client for payment status as blank. So now I can just choose the node key of those things. Basically, I want also the buyer GUID. So node key and buyer GUID. These two I want. So I got it. So here I have got now the invoices which are open and for a given client. Next, what I will do is I will do a join between my items and header table. Okay. So how can I do this join? So I can use join function. So LT final, or I can say LT gross invoices. I will just get the join. So I use CE join function to join these two columns, basically these two tables. So first table is my header table, and second table is my items table. these two tables I would like to join. So those two arguments I pass, and then I have to pass here the join condition. Remember, the join column name has to be same in both the tables. So when you're doing projection, make sure your column name which you selected to participate in join matches the name. So here we selected parent key as invoice inv guide. I should also do it same when I'm selecting the node key here. Okay, so that's what we will do. And then the invoice GUID becomes the join condition. So now this is a join table of all the open invoices for a given client with the gross amount. Have we selected the gross amount and currency code? Yes, gross amount and currency code has been selected. So now on this table you can actually do a summation. So we will use CE aggregation to get the total gross before the conversion takes place. So I remove this entire code from here, and before the conversion takes place I am going to just do an aggregation summation of the data. So I will just use unconverted amount equals to CE aggregation and pass my cross invoice amount comma, and then here I will do an aggregation of my data. I will tell the system that unconverted amount should be aggregated. What should be aggregated? Summation of my gross amount should be aggregated. So that aggregated column will come here. So I say sum of gross amount as gross amount. Okay, and then we can put the remaining columns which are going to participate in the group by clause over here, which is currency code and my column called BP underscore ID. Is that what we selected already? Buyer GUID we have selected actually. So buyer GUID as BP ID I am doing. And my join is already been executed here based on this. So buyer GUID from this table, currency code from that table, sum of aggregation will be done. And then it's going to select, it is going to basically do a total for me. Yeah. So once this is done, here I will in this table I'm going to get the BP ID, I'm going to get currency code. I missed the company name actually. I missed the company name. No, company name is not required here because later on we are joining this over here with the BP table actually. Or are we not joining it later? No, we are not joining this later with BP table. So let's do a join again with BP table here with this buyer GUID, and then it is going to do the connection. So LT gross invoice sum currency code buyer GUID. So gross amount will get converted here, and then you will get buyer GUID. So let's do a final join later point of time after it gets converted here, and I will do a join with BP table. Amount total. Here actually we are already doing it. So oh okay, no we are not. So I have to do a join now between this unconverted amount with the amount with GUID. This should be joined guys with my BP table actually. So my unconverted amount should be equals to a join between my this table and my LTBP, which I'm going to read now based on my join condition is going to be my buyer GUID. And then let's create this BP. LTBP equals to CE function projection. CE column table from database table. What role I'm going to select? SNWD underscore BPA table say. I will select the buyer GUID, which is node key as buyer GUID, and I'm going to select company name and BP underscore ID from this table. That's all my selection will be, and that finally these two gets joined here with amount GUID, and that's your CE function based operation for before you do currency conversion. So that's how you apply CE functions. But SAP now don't recommend to use CE functions because optimization is not possible provided you write everything in CE function. If everything written in CE function, good. But typically it cannot happen because you have to do code push down using imperative logic. You have to use scalar variables. So that's the reason why SAP don't recommend you to use CE function, because there will be a, a, a code switch between the calculation engine and your SQL optimizer. So that would lead to performance issues for you. It will be even worse than what you do in ABAP. So make sure SAP don't recommend. Even in fact, it's written in the guidelines over here. You can see recommendation. SAP recommends that you use SQL rather than calculation engine plan operators with SQL script. So it's clearly a guidance from SAP to not make use of these CE functions, because in most of the cases the plan operators are converted internally to SQL operations, and conversion requires multiple layers of optimization. This can be avoided by using direct SQL. Depending on your system configuration and version you use, mixing the calculation plan operator and SQL can lead to significant performance penalties, which when compared to plain SQL implementation. So again, a good news for us, don't use them, don't spend time on them. Of course, you should know them, at least the names of them and what is the equivalent SQL statement for the interview point of view. But it's better and easy to go ahead with SQL script. I'm not sure whether this will work. Have I done some mistake? Maybe I'll just try to run this and recreate our procedure. Of course, there is an error. Parameter must be attribute without an alias. So there's a problem in line number 21. Now we will again get into game of fixing this. Maybe let me do it offline and finally give you the output of expected results. So I will post the output of this. Um, I will correct it. I will post the final output so that you will be able to run the OIA scenario with CE functions. Okay. So what is pending from my side in SQL script? We will see now taking our OIA scenario to a calculation view with a SQL script. We will consume a HANA calculation view or an analytical view in SQL script. Then we will consume these views in ABAP system using HANA procedure proxy. And then we will talk about AMDPs. All that will be covered in next class. After that, we'll move to CDS views. So two class on CDS views. Then one class will be, two classes will be on um, consuming the CDS views, analytical rich analytical models in your Fiori application using AVP and Smart template. And one session will be on ALV, how to use Smart ALV fuzzy search in SAP ABAP on HANA. So all in all, we have now 5 classes which are pending on ABAP on HANA, 23rd, 24th, and then we will have a break for 30th and 30th, 31st. We will not have sessions. We will have sessions only on next weekend, and then we will come back after new year. In next year I will complete the course in the second week of January itself. Okay, so it was a difficult class, I understand. A lot of code I've written and a lot of errors, so many people got pissed off, left the session. But please don't do that. You need to stick to it. If you stick to it, definitely you will learn. You should try yourself writing SQL script to achieve these results. With that, it's a wrap on today's class. See you next weekend. Have a nice day and goodbye. Any questions before we close? Anybody? Any questions? We will compare the time when we will take this code to ABAP. In ABAP, when I will call this procedure, I will show you the time which it takes. So I will post a separate txt file fixing these issues of CE operators here, and that will be available to you. Utilizing SQL script information model. Yes, we will do that. How to call analytical view using SQL script, especially passing the parameters. So yesterday Nag was asking how to pass parameter to my analytical view from SQL script. We will see that in the next chapter. Okay. This is the only complex part in ABAP on HANA. CDS views are the most simplest objects. SQL script is the only complex part, and that's why nobody wants to get into it. Believe me, no trainer will get into it because this is very complex. The code, you saw the code, how complex our code has become over a period of time. And I was myself facing lot of issues fixing it. But good news is we fixed it. We keep trying hard to fix it. And that's what really a good sign of doing things. This shows that we are doing things. It doesn't mean we left it in the middle. We did it, we sat on it, we fixed all the issues, we got the output, we compared it, and it was matching. And that's what exactly true developer is. You should never give up on issues. Okay. So with that, it's a wrap. See you tomorrow on the next weekend. Have a nice day and goodbye.